All right. Sorry, everybody, for the delay. For some reason, it wouldn't let me go live. Now I have this beam of light going on here. Let me see if I can fix that. It's not getting any better. So we'll just have to bear with the beam of light coming down. So I apologize for the delay here. For some reason, it wouldn't let me go live on the office hours. So had to restart my machine, and then it took particularly long to restart my machine. So sorry about that. But I'll go an extra, however many minutes just to make up for the lost time that we had in the beginning here. First, a quick note I wanted to mention. As you probably know, we reside here in Florida, Orlando, Florida. We do have a hurricane headed our way. Monday, there won't be any office hours due to the holiday, Labor Day holiday. But Tuesday, it's possible, we plan on having office hours, but the hurricane's going to be hitting, Monday, Tuesday, around in that area. Getting an echo. If anybody else is getting an echo, let me know. I haven't changed anything to the sound, so it might be Mike, it might be your speakers or something like that. So, but anyway, it's possible we may not have office hours on Tuesday or Wednesday, or depending on the aftermath of all that. So, John, thanks for the feedback there. So keep that in mind. We're going to try to have office hours if we can, but it's possible, they could be canceled. So let's go ahead and get started with some questions here. So I see that Lawrence B got on here after the office hours ended yesterday and said they learned a lot from my questions, but I didn't answer or get to his. So if I can scroll, I'll try to scroll down and see where Lawrence. So there we go. See where Lawrence asked his question yesterday and I didn't get to it. Okay, so I see why your question wasn't answered. So Lawrence, your question wasn't answered yesterday because you asked it at 12:37 p.m. Eastern time. So I only take questions up to an hour before the office hours start. And the reason I do that is that I want to make sure that people who are here present watching the office hours can see them get answered. Now, in your situation, you asked the question at 12:37, then showed up 2 hours later or 3 hours later to see it get answered. So I'll go ahead and answer your question here, but just keep in mind in the future, up to an hour before and then during the office hours, those will be the questions that I'll be taking. If you answer it during, more than an hour, or if you ask it more than an hour before, I'm not likely going to answer it unless we just don't have any questions and I got to backtrack to look at some questions just to answer some. So I'll go ahead and answer your question here. Lawrence B says, I pull too many iron shots. I hit fairly straight on the practice tee, but lose too many shots on the course. So that's fairly normal. One thing about hitting on the practice tee is that a lot of people are like LeBron James, when they're on the practice tee, right? Like the equivalent, they hit the ball perfect every single time. And then you get out on the course and it's like you've never played before in your life sometimes, and that's just the nature of it. So one thing to understand is that you're always going to be better on the practice tee, almost always going to be better on the practice tee than you are out on the course. And the reason for that is that there's so many reasons for it. One, when you're hitting on the practice tee, there's no pressure of anything. You just hit the ball into oblivion and nothing matters. So that's why it's a great place to practice, because you can work on techniques and you don't have to worry about hitting a bad shot. But a lot of times, you'll hit the same shot over and over and over again. I see people, they'll grab their 7-iron, then they'll just hit like 57 irons in a row, just at nothing, and give themselves a perfect lie every single time. And a lot of times it's hard to see if you got the distance exactly right. Especially if you're hitting off of mats, you may hit behind it and it felt great, but the result of the shot was 10 yards shorter. But sometimes that's hard to tell when you're on the driving range. So the ball's perfect lie. The ball's always even with your feet. On the course that doesn't happen. You're gonna have downhill lies, side hill lies. You're gonna be behind trees. There's going to be all kinds of things going on. So just keep in mind, just in general, you're always going to hit the ball better on the practice tee. You can't really expect to hit it as well out on the course. And when you're on the practice tee as well, you're sitting there, you're getting in a groove. That's not what's happening on the course either. And you're also sitting there, you're hitting the same club every single time. That's not happening on the course. It's very rare, actually, that you would hit the same club 2 times in a row. It's almost always you're hitting, you're hitting whatever ball off the tee, and then you're hitting, an iron or whatever it might be. And then, then it's either chipping with a wedge or chipping or putting, hopefully, so that you're changing shots every single time. So one thing to make it a little bit better so that your practice tee shots can translate more to your on-course shots is to make your practice like the end of your practice, like the last 30 balls or so, make it a lot like it is on the course. And the way that you can do that is to kind of play the course in your head on the range. So think of a course that you know really well, probably your home course, the one you play most of the time, or maybe you're preparing for a tournament and hopefully you know the course well enough to be able to do this. But let's say that the first hole is a 400-yard par 4. That's a driver hole, and there's no trouble anywhere. It's just grip it and rip it. So you go up there and you just go through kind of your routine. You step up and you hit the shot. And if it's a 400-yard par 4 and you usually drive the ball 250 and you hit what you think is a good drive, the next club would be your 250-yard club. Or you can even play, if it's into the wind and you think, well, that probably only went 230, 240 if I normally hit 250 because I was into the wind, then you might want to take whatever club you would hit 170 or 180 into the wind and go about it that way. And then you hit your next shot. And if you hit it well, the good part about it is if you imagine that you hit it and you hit it well and you hit it on the green, you make all the putts. So you make a birdie. If you hit the green, you make birdie, you move on to the next hole. That's kind of the fun part about it. So you shoot really, really low scores. But let's say you chunk one. We all chunk one every now and then, or some people more often than others, obviously. If you chunk one and it only goes 100 yards, then maybe you're hitting a pitch shot. You're getting out a wedge and you're hitting a pitch shot 50 yards. And then you just play until you imagine that you got the ball onto the green. So that's changing clubs every time. That's taking some time between shots, going through your routine, thinking through what you're doing. And that's a great way to kind of translate what you do on the practice range to the golf course. So that's just, that kind of went off on a tangent there, but I just wanted to mention that to help you kind of make that more clear. So let's talk about the pulled iron shots. Now, a pulled shot is caused by your face being closed at impact and your path being too much out to in. A pulled shot, let's just define what a pulled shot is. A shot, if you're a right-handed golfer, a pulled shot is a ball that starts left and then just goes straight left. There's no curvature on the shot. It's just kind of a straight shot that goes to the left. Starts left and then just continues to the left with no curvature. That's what I define that as. So in order for that to happen, the face has to be closed, and then your club path has to be pretty much in the same direction as your club face. So if your face is pointed to the left, then your club path, the way that your club is moving through impact is moving to the left as well. And that causes the ball to start left and keep on going left with no curvature on it. So the reason why I explain that is because I think it's really, really important to know why, what's going on at impact that caused the pull, because that makes it so much easier to fix it. And the best way and the easiest way to fix anything like that is to exaggerate the opposite. So what would be the opposite of pulling the ball? That'd be pushing the ball. So in order to push the ball, you have to come through with an open club face and you have to swing more into out. So that's what I'd be trying to do, is I'd try to swing into out with an open club face and see what happens at that point. And then you just continue. What most likely will happen is you'll end up hitting a more straight shot. But what may happen is that you may slice it or something like that. And then it just comes down to adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. So in order to do that, I try to feel like you're swinging more into out with an open club face. So an out to in swing would be the club head's kind of coming down. It's coming down more outside the hands. So see how I'm kind of swinging down and I'm swinging more outside the hands. And a lot of times this happens on the golf course because an out to in swing, kind of an over the top type swing, is more prevalent when you are using too much upper body. And a lot of times that happens on the golf course is we get too much upper body centric in our golf swing, and we don't use the legs enough. We don't get a proper weight shift. So you want to get this club working more from the inside and try to feel like this club's swinging way from the inside, almost as if you were standing in a beach, right? And you were swinging and you were trying to splash that sand in a certain direction. So if you were swinging in to out and you were splashing that sand, that sand would splash out that way, out to the right. If you were swinging out to in, the sand would splash out to the left. So kind of imagine that sand kind of splashing in that direction, and then the club face kind of being in that same direction too. So give that a try. The next time you get those pulls going on, maybe get a pull or a couple pulls in a row. Try to feel like you're swinging more in to out as you're coming through impact, and that should straighten things out. If you're continuing to have trouble with pulls, I would recommend working through our Never Slice Again course. That course, I know you're not slicing, but a pull and a slice are a product of the same issue, and that's an issue of swinging too much out to in. The only difference with a slice is that your club face is open to your club path. So maybe your face is square, you're coming in and your face is dead square, but your path is coming in this direction. Well, that's going to you're going to cut across the ball there, and that's going to cause a slice. So working through that Never Slice Again course, that whole entire course is all about getting you to swing more from the inside. So I'd recommend that course as well. And to get to the courses, all you got to do is click on the house icon at the top of the screen there. There's a little house. If you click on that, that's going to take you to the home page. And if you scroll down on the home page, you'll see the Top Speed Golf System course progress. If you scroll down about halfway down in there, you'll see the Never Slice Again course, and those will be all the drills to help you to swing more into out. So Lawrence, hopefully you get the chance to see this, and it will help you. But just keep in mind, to get your questions answered, you want to make sure you ask them at the right time. Otherwise, they may not get answered. All right, so let me go ahead and scroll back up to the top here and start taking some of these more recent questions. So first question is going to be from Gord B. And Gord B actually has two questions. Says, when chipping from the fringe, I noticed lately that players are blading wedges rather than using a hybrid to contact the ball. Any comments or techniques to consider which to use? That's a great question. And what I would recommend doing is kind of not really using either. Well, a wedge, you can use both, but there's situations where there aren't very many situations where when you're chipping from the fringe, you'd want to use either one. So using a wedge from the fringe, the only time I would use a wedge from the fringe is if I just don't have a lot of green to work with and I need to get this ball on the best shot to hit is a chip from the fringe, unless you're able to putt it. But if you're not able to putt it, because that's probably going to be your highest percentage play is to putt it. But if the grass, fringe is different everywhere. If it's really thick and there's a lot of dew in it as well, that's going to really slow down the ball. And if it's really thick, that's going to slow down the ball. It's going to make it harder to judge coming out of there. So in those cases, and if you have a lot of fringe between the golf ball and the edge of the green, that can be harder to judge as well. I mean, I know you probably watched the Open Championship and saw people putting from 10 yards off the green. Well, that is a surface that is probably similar to a lot of public courses putting greens, right? It's a very, very sharply mown and tightly mown surface so that they can easily, truly putt the ball kind of through that. And it's usually the highest percentage play in that case. But if you have bushy kind of fringes, they're kind of tall and they're wet and things of that nature, it's going to make it harder to judge. And a lot of times it's easier to just carry the fringe and get it on the green and rolling as soon as possible. So anytime you'd really want to use a wedge is if you're in that situation and if you just don't have a lot of green to work with. So maybe the hole is 3 paces off the green there, just like 10 feet off the green, and you don't have a lot of space to allow this ball to roll out. In that case, I would use a wedge and you hit a pitch shot, your standard chip shot, from that area. And that's going to get the ball on the green, and it won't roll very far the way that you need it to. And you just use the same technique that you would use in our chipping master class, or not chipping master class, chipping mastery course on the website. So if you need some chipping technique work, I'd recommend going to that chipping mastery course and work through that to get a good chipping technique. And to do that, click on the house icon, scroll down, Top Speed Golf System course progress, and then you'll see the chipping mastery course and start working through the drills there for standard technique. Now, using a hybrid, I personally I like using the hybrid in a sense because I think it's more fun. But I usually only do it when I'm kind of messing around. But the reason why I wouldn't do it if I'm trying to compete in a tournament, I wouldn't use that kind of shot. The main reason is that it's a little harder to judge. Now, with some practice, you can get very good at it, but it's harder to judge because it comes off really, really hot off the face of a hybrid. Now, if you have higher lofted hybrids, let's say you have a 5 hybrid, 6 hybrid, those would be great chipping clubs when you have a lot of green to work with. But myself, I just have a 3 hybrid. I think it's 19 degrees or something like that. It's not a lot of loft on there. That ball is coming off hot when I hit it, and it's going to be a little bit harder for me to control the distance with it. It would probably be easier if I used like a 5 or a 6 iron to chip instead of the hybrid, and you're probably going to get very similar results with it. It's just that the iron might be a little bit easier to control the distance with. So it's really up to you. But as far as chipping, most of the time, you're usually going to be using a mid to lower iron. Just you're trying to think about how far. The goal of a chip is to get it to carry it on the green, a couple yards, and then allow it to roll the rest of the way to the hole. So if you imagine you're hitting a hybrid, if you're chipping that onto the green, you've got to carry that onto the green, 2 or 3 yards, 10 feet or something like that, then that ball is going to roll out a long way. So you got to have a lot of green to work with in order to use that lower lofted club and a club where it comes so hot off the face. So most of the time, when I'm chipping shots, it's almost always with my pitching wedge or my 8 iron. Very rarely, not very rarely necessarily, but less common would be using my wedge when I'm kind of short-sighted, or using a very low lofted club like a 5 iron or a hybrid where I have a ton of green to work with. But you just have to, find the shot, something to go out and practice and to see how balls kind of react. But the goal of a chip is to get it on the green as soon as possible and to get it rolling toward the hole as soon as you can. And typically you want to carry that, 6 to 10 feet onto the green, 2 or 3 yards onto the green. And that way you're not messing with landing it on the fringe, because it's going to react a lot differently if you land it on the fringe and, have it roll out to the green, as opposed to landing it on the green and having it roll out to the hole. So it just takes some practice to kind of get that worked out. All right, so let me take a look at your next question here. So the second question is, when initiating the downswing, videos show lowering the body slightly. I tend to hit fat when I'm trying this. Cure. So basically, you're exactly right. What you're going to see with most tour players is you're going to see in the transition as they're going up to the top of the swing. And I apologize for this beam of light coming down. It's from my bright light here. It didn't used to do that, but sometimes it shows that beam of light. But anyway, you're going to see a lot of tour players, how they're actually lowering in the backswing a few inches, 2 or 3 inches. And then the transition, you're going to see they'll even lower a little bit more. And then about when these hands when you get about halfway down, you'll see they kind of stay level. So they get here and then they stop lowering and kind of stay in that same spot as they're continuing to rotate through impact. So that comes from proper sequencing, loading into the ground. And if you're hitting fat shots when you're doing that, what it usually means is that you're not transferring your weight properly and you're not sequencing properly. So what I'd recommend doing is working on a weight shift drill. And Gord, this is just my best estimation of what's going on in your swing when you are chunking the ball, when you're trying to do this. In order for me to know for a fact, I would need to see your swing, and I would also need to be able to evaluate that. And in order to do that, you'd need to sign up for the unlimited swing reviews. But this is most likely what's going on. And in most situations, this is going to be something that's really going to help you out quite a bit. And that's just getting to your lead side a lot better. The best drill to work on that is going to be the step drill. I'm not sure if you've seen the step drill. We've used the step drill, or Clay has done the step drill in several videos on the website. But one of my favorite ones, and it actually pertains almost exactly to your question, is how to start the downswing. Clay demonstrates that step drill in that video. And he actually talks about, in that video, he talks about the lowering and raising of the body and things like that. So I think it would relate directly kind of to your question, and it may turn on some light bulbs for you. So, the best way to find that video and to work on the step drill, and if any of you out there who are hitting fat shots, struggling hitting a lot of fat shots, most likely part of it's because of a poor weight shift. A lot of people are kind of have misconceptions about that weight shift, or don't really even think about it at all. But that step drill is really the best drill out there for working on that, and it's in that video. So to find that video, in the upper right hand corner, you'll see a search window. It says search this website, I believe it says, and it's got a little search button next to it. Click on that and just type the word downswing. And what will happen is you'll get some search results, and the search engine on the website actually works really well. If you're ever looking for something specific on a keyword, let's say you're looking for chipping videos, you could literally just type chipping and you will get a ton of videos to come up. We've covered so many things. There are probably, I know there are over 500, there might be 700 videos on the website. So if you can imagine, we've probably got at least one video on about anything you can think of as it pertains to the golf swing, or just golf in general. So if you use that search engine, search the word downswing. It should be the third video down. It's called How to Start the Downswing. It's got some yellow lettering in the thumbnail of the video. That'll be the one that you want. And last time I looked for it, or I searched for it, it was the third video down. So watch that video, and I think that will really, really help you with your second question as well, and get you working on that step drill. So Mike L says, no problem. And everybody, thanks for bearing with me while I was dealing with some tech issues to start. It wouldn't let me start the video, so I had to restart my computer, and it took a while to do that. And John C asks if it was in session. We're in session now. So James Y says, can you incorporate the bow of your wrist as you bring the club back? This has been the most difficult for me. So yes, you can do that, but I find it to be very difficult. I think the easiest way for most people is to essentially have a flat or slightly bowed wrist at the top of the swing. So kind of be at the top of the swing, kind of in this position like this. And then the downswing, do a little bit of bowing and squaring of the club face early. That's what you're going to see probably 95% of tour players doing, probably more than that, actually. But you do see some tour players who are bowing that lead wrist in the backswing. So to name a few, and these are great players, by the way, to name a few would be Dustin Johnson, right? Brooks Koepka does it to a certain extent, not to the extreme, but he's more in a more slightly bowed position. He really bows it in that transition. You talk about John Ram. I mean, we're talking about top 10 players in the world that are doing this. So if you can do it, for me, honestly, I tried it. Trust me, I tried it because I thought, oh, that might be an easier way to do it. But it's hard for me. It actually hurts my wrist to do it. But if you have the dexterity and the ability to do it, and it's more comfortable for you and you get better results with it, then absolutely go ahead and do it that way. But I found with most students and with most people in general, including myself, it's easier to kind of have that flat wrist or slightly bowed wrist at the top, and to kind of try to bow that a little bit in the downswing to get that club face squaring earlier. But absolutely, you can do it if you're capable of doing it. The whole idea here is just getting that club face square at impact and to have forward shaffling. That's the whole point of bowing that lead wrist, is to get that club face squaring earlier so that you can rotate into impact, get that club to release out in front, and have that club face square at impact when you have forward shaffling. That's what the move is all about. So Mike, hopefully you were able to get the echo figured out. John C replied back and said he didn't have any issues with an echo. So I'm guessing It has to do with your computer, your speakers, or something like that. All right. So John C says, I have a question on swing thoughts. When I had my best ever round, I had one swing thought. This really made my round amazing. The thought that I had was to just bend the shaft as I head into the slot. It was real simple, and I could do no wrong. What are your thoughts on your mind prior to lifting the club in your backswing? So that's exactly right. If you ask a lot of tour players, a lot of times they don't have any swing thoughts, or they have one swing thought. I recall, I believe it was when it was the last major that Adam Scott won. Forgive me, I can't remember exactly what that major was, but they asked him, kind of what he wasn't playing well going into that week, and then his one swing thought was just making sure that he gets to his lead side. That was his only swing thought throughout the entire round. I mean, obviously, hitting the ball solid and things like that, you're thinking about those things. But as far as a actual technique and internal focus is what I would call that, where you're thinking about things that your body is doing and not so much what the club is doing, but thinking about what your body is doing. That's an internal focus. So he had one internal focus, and that was to get to his lead side, and it led to him winning a major championship. So I agree. You want to have, if you have any swing thoughts at all, you want to have one swing thought. You can have a maximum of two. And here's why you can have two. And they have to be one in the backswing and one in the downswing. You cannot have two downswing swing thoughts. Anybody who tells me that they're thinking about doing two different things in the downswing, I don't really believe it. Jack Nicklaus talked about, in the documentary from a couple years ago that the Golf Channel did, how he had tons of swing thoughts, and he did all of them. And I just don't believe that for a second, to be honest. I think he's kind of full of it in regards to that. I don't know. I mean, maybe a psychologist or someone who has more of authority on how the brain works and things like that could relate on that. But as far as I'm concerned, for me, I could only really have one internal focus at a time. And I think that's the way it is for most people. And for some people, that's even difficult. So what I recommend, if you're going to have two swing thoughts, one has to be the backswing and one has to be the downswing. You got to think about it. The downswing is happening, and if you measure, if you look on V1 Golf and the V1 Golf app, if you download that and record your swing, it'll actually have a little timer on there and it has it to like the 1,000th second or something like that on there, where you can play your swing and see how long your downswing takes from the top of the swing to the golf ball. You can get it to an estimated form. It's typically about 0.25, a quarter to a third of a second from the time the club switches directions to where the club gets to the golf ball. It's usually a quarter of a second to a third of a second. You don't have time to have two swing thoughts going on. You barely have enough time to think about one thing if you're lucky. In the backswing's happening. The backswing usually takes about a second for a lot of people. So it's somewhere in that area. So you can think about a backswing thought and then a downswing thought. But I would start out with a one downswing thought if you can, a backswing or one backswing thought, whatever one's helping you to hit the ball the best. But I wouldn't try to have so many things in your mind. There's that famous poster where it shows a guy. I can't remember exactly what it's called. I've been wanting to get it printed out and put in my office here. But basically, there's a poster where it shows a guy addressing the golf ball, and it's got all these kind of thought bubbles around him. It's all these million swing thoughts that he has going on at the same time. And that's a recipe for disaster right there. You're not going to play very good golf when you're doing that, because most of those are almost always going to be internal focuses. And it's going to take away from the most important thing, which is actually hitting the darn golf ball, right? So what I recommend doing, if you need a swing thought, if you need an internal focus and it helps you to hit the golf ball better, then absolutely go for it. And you know what? If you have 5 swing thoughts and it helps you hit the golf ball better, then who am I to tell you that it's wrong? I'm just saying that for me, and what I found with most people, with basically every person I've ever worked with, no one is able to hit good golf shots when you have, unless you're lucking into it. if you have 5, 10 swing thoughts going on at the same time in the golf swing. So I would focus on impact and impact only if you don't have to have a swing thought. So maybe your focus is just on getting ball first contact. So that'd be an external focus. So making sure you get that, you're focusing on that ball first contact if you're chunking the ball. Maybe if you're chunking the ball, you're focusing on getting to your lead side like Adam Scott was doing. Maybe you're kind of flipping the club, and part of that is because you're coming down steep. So an internal focus might be to really focus on feeling like you're turning the doorknob to the right in the downswing. So it's all about finding the swing thought, and we change all the time, right? We're constantly changing, and we have to adapt ourselves to what's going on. So it's not like you'll use one swing thought for your entire life and that's going to work. That usually doesn't work that way. Usually you kind of evolve and something else kind of creeps in. You got to use a different kind of swing thought. Some days you're just going to suck, and then some days you're going to come back and you're going to use a different swing thought. It's going to work great. So I recommend one swing thought at a time, at most two. If you have two, it has to be a backswing and a downswing. You can't have two backswing and two downswing. There's just not enough time going on there. But what I highly recommend is external focuses, which would be focusing on impact. So center face contact, ball first contact, square club face, club path being on plane, those sorts of things. That's usually what helps you to hit the ball the best. Hopefully, if you're working through the Top Speed Golf system, your technique is going to be in good shape, so you don't have to think about all these little things, these internal focuses. Hopefully you've gotten in the reps that will take care of the technique part, and all you have to do is focus on the ball striking part, which would be the external focus part, and that will help you hit the ball the best. All right, so Anonymous says, sorry, in question number 1 about chipping from the fringe when the ball is up against the collar with higher grass behind the ball. So one way that you can do that first of all, that is a tough shot. That is not an easy shot to do. And I'll try to kind of demonstrate a way that you can kind of do that here, the way that you can do that. So basically what you want to do is, so let's actually use this as kind of being the collar, right? So the hole is over that way, and my ball is up against this collar here. So I can't really get that club behind the golf ball very well. So what I actually recommend doing is intentionally kind of trying to top it and hitting it with the leading edge of your wedge. So that would be basically setting up to it like this and basically trying to control that leading edge and just hitting it with the leading edge like that. That's what intentionally try to blade it. Now, something I haven't seen this in a long time, but a lot of times what I saw with some tour players a while back, and I saw Vijay Singh do it. I saw several tour players do it after that. I haven't seen a tour player do it in a long time. So maybe they changed a rule or something that didn't allow you to do this. But what I would see is they would take, if they had like a blade putter, and it might be that there might be so many people using more mallet and higher MOI putters these days that you just don't see that many people doing it. But if you have a blade type putter, this is obviously the ultimate blade putter. It's a bullseye putter. But if you have, a King Answer or something like that type of putter, you could turn the putter to where it's like this way, and you can kind of hit it like that, almost like you're hammering the ball a little bit. And the reason why you do that is it gets through, this is going to get through the grass a lot more easily than this is, because there's more surface area for that grass to grab right here. If you have the club like this, it's going to get through the grass a lot easier. The problem with that is I think it's really hard to control this little pinpoint end of the club, especially if you have this, kind of, and a lot of times those ends aren't very, uniform. They're usually there's a lot of textures and things to them and contour to them. So it may be harder to control, to do that. But that's one way that you can do it, is that way. But the easiest way is just to take a wedge, kind of hover it above the grass, and literally try to just hit the equator of the ball with the leading edge of the putter, and basically just kind of try to blade it almost as if you were putting it. And that will help you. That will keep the club from digging into the grass too much and allow you to get that ball in a nice roll going toward the hole. Keep in mind, that's a tough shot. That's one you're going to have to practice. I'll go practice that a little bit and see if that helps you. All right. So Jin G says, when you are not working on a specific swing technique and just practicing on the range, what is the best suggestion for practicing play a simulated round? What do you do? So I think that's a really good way as well, as to play a simulated round. I'll tell you what I do when I'm not working on specific techniques is I do what's called a shot matrix. And basically what I do is I'll go and I'll create a tic-tac board. I'll bring like a piece of paper or use notes on my phone. The note apps on your phone, you can use those as well. But basically what I'll do is I'll create a tic-tac board. So hopefully y'all can see this. So here's my tic-tac-toe board up here. So with that beam of light makes it a little bit difficult to see. But hopefully y'all can kind of see that I created a tic-tac-toe board, and hopefully y'all understand what that is. So basically what I'm doing here is this is going to be fade, straight, draw, and this is going to be high, medium, low. So this is curvature of my shot. So fade, straight, draw. And then this here is trajectory, high, medium, and low trajectory. And what I'll do is I'll start right in the middle. And I will try to hit a shot that is straight and a medium trajectory shot. So this would be just like your stock golf shot. The one, it's not necessarily your go-to shot. Maybe it's not. I would just start with whatever your stock shot is. So if it's easiest for you to hit a medium trajectory, it's almost always going to be a medium trajectory shot, which is going to be your stock shot. But maybe it's easiest for you to fade or to draw to hit a straight shot. For me, it's typically just kind of that straight shot. And what I'll do is I will count how many times it takes me to hit a perfectly straight. Now, it doesn't have to be, if it draws 1 or 2 yards, I mean, come on, let's not be too stringent on it. But, a relatively really straight shot in a right trajectory, it has to be center face contact. I have to hit solid, can't chunk it or anything like that. It has to land within, 10 yards of my target, if you're going at a 20-yard wide green. And I'll count how many shots it takes me to get that to get that perfect shot. So let's say it took me 3 shots right out of the bat. So I'll put a 3 right there. And then I'll just continue. And it doesn't matter which way you go. I would just start with whichever one's easiest for you. And then I would just, randomly, kind of go wherever you want. So let's say you're going to go with the high fade next. So what I would do is I would visualize a high fade, and I would, make my adjustments, my setup adjustments. I might set up a little bit more open with the face more open, and I try to come through contact, being a little bit more angled away from the target to help me hoist the ball and get the ball with a higher trajectory, come in more shallow with my divot so that I can get a more higher trajectory shot. And I would count how many times it took me to get a solidly hit fade. And it doesn't matter if it fades 5 yards or 2 yards or 1 yard, as long as the ball starts left and curves right to the target, then that shot would count. And then I would just say, okay, well, it took me 4 shots to get that. So I would just continue, and maybe it's a low draw. Usually this is one of the toughest ones, the low fade, because when you hit a fade, you'll tend to open up the face, which adds loft typically. So it's harder to hit a low fade typically. So you really have to de-loft the face a little bit more. So that's usually where I have the most shots, typically right here, just because it's a little bit harder for me. And the low straight shot usually takes me a little bit more as well. The low draw is fairly easier, but the low straight shots is a little bit harder as well, because I tend to hit down too much on the shots that I'm trying to hit lower, and that adds more spin and makes it a little bit hard. If you're a little bit off, that ball is going to have some curvature to it, a little bit more curvature to it than it would normally. So sometimes that shot's a little bit difficult. These are my kind of problem areas, right in that area, but everything else is fairly about the same. So once you get to filling this out, if I just randomly kind of just think, so let's say this was 2, this was 4, this was, let's say that this was 2, 3. Let's say that this one took 7 for some reason. This one was 8. And I would cap it to probably 8 or 10 shots or something like that. And then let's say that this one was 3. So what I can do at this point is I can kind of add these up, and I can kind of see where my problem areas are a little bit. So if I add this up, I can see 7. So 4 and 3 is 7, and that's 15. So just fades in general, it took me 15 shots to get those trajectories. And then the straight one, if I look at, it's 5, and that's also 15, right? So that's 15 for my straight shots. And then this is 7 and 9. So if I look at this, I think, okay, fades were 15, straight shots were 15, and draws were 9. Okay, I'm not struggling with the draws. The draws I'm doing pretty good with. Now, if I look at my trajectories, and I can kind of see what else is going on. So this is 6 and 10. This would be 9, and then 15 and 17. So now we can see high shots are 10, a total of 10, and medium trajectory shots were 9, but low trajectory shots we're at 17. So clearly, my biggest struggles are fades and low fades, basically, and just low shots in general. Low trajectory shots are a little bit harder for me. And fade and straight shots. A draw might be a little bit easier for me, and then fade and straight shots are a little bit more difficult. So it kind of shows you where you struggle a little bit. Now, how can you fix this? What I would do is the rest of the range session, once I filled out my matrix here, I would kind of work on this area right here, these low and straight and draw shots, because that's clearly where I had the most trouble. I would just get some extra work going on with that, and that's going to help you overall. And then you keep track of this. Keep track of this in a note app. Keep track of it on a notepad or something like that. And then the next time you go out, you know how you did and what you worked on. And then what you can do is you can try to beat your score. You can kind of compete against yourself and try to beat your score from last time. So overall, you can kind of add all these up, and you can see that this was 15 and 15 is 30. It was 39 shots total is how many shots it took me to get this. And you just try to beat that overall number, and then you can try to beat your individual numbers as well. The other thing that you can do is, remember, we're trying to get basically a perfect shot. It has to be solid. It has to be ball first contact. You're going to also, as you're going through this, you're going to find where your biggest miss was. So let's say that I went through this, and the reason why I didn't get perfect strikes on a lot of these, and right now for me, it's kind of heel thin shots is what's going on for me. So just in my golf swing at the moment is I'm struggling just a little bit with heel and thin shots. So I would work on also, in addition to that, is working on improving my heel and thin shots. So that might be working on some technique. It might be just working on adjusting my feel a little bit, trying to hit it high on the toe, essentially. So that's kind of what you can do in a range session. If you're not working on necessarily the Top Speed Golf System specific technique, this is a really, really great play. And I think this is something that probably a lot of tour players do, or something very similar to this. But this is basically what I do, and it really, really helps me out a lot when working on stuff. So hopefully that helps you to really help you improve your game. And the Ball Striking Masterclass, I tell you what, this is a great way to understand exactly how to do all this stuff, how to hit draws and fades, high, low, medium trajectory shots. That's going to be a great class for a lot of you. So hopefully that helps, and give it a try the next time you go out and see if it helps you out. All right, so John C says, Q, to further that up, I was attempting to bend shaft of my club using my entire body as I descend club down towards the slot area. So John C, I have to go back to his, so he's talking about the one swing thought. So everybody is built a little bit differently. If you find a swing thought that's helping you to achieve a better ball flight or a better, more solid shot, then who am I to tell you that that's the wrong shot, swing thought to have? I think a lot of times when people get these swing thoughts, they feel like they're doing something, and it's actually resulting in something else happening that's having them hit better golf shots. That can happen sometimes. But in general, you're saying that you're attempting to bend the shaft of your club using your entire body as you slits. So I guess maybe that helps you get some lag. Maybe that helps you feel like you're kind of covering the ball a little bit and you're getting a more compressed golf shot. But hey, if that's helping you hit better golf shots, then stick with it. I don't see any issue with that. It wouldn't make any sense for me to if you're hitting great golf shots with that swing thought, for me to say, oh, that's wrong. You got to stop doing that. Because why would you stop doing that? You're hitting good golf shots, right? So, I wouldn't listen to really any teacher that tells you, hey, I'm hitting great golf shots right now with this swing thought. Should I stick with it? And they say, oh, no, don't do that. If that's what's going on, then, you're hitting great golf shots, then, stick with it. Who am I to tell you that's wrong? So just keep on moving here. And I'll try to get to everyone's question. Like I said, I'll stay on here a little bit later. I also wanted to mention if you haven't been on with me the whole time, I'm not sure if you know, but we are in Florida, and if you haven't been paying attention to the news, we have a hurricane headed our way, and it's going to be here Monday, Tuesday-ish. We already won't have office hours on Monday due to the holiday, but Tuesday it's possible that we may not have office hours either, or Wednesday, or anytime next week. We just don't know what the aftermath of all this is going to be. I may completely lose power and internet and all that stuff. So bear with us while we're dealing with that. And hopefully, it just kind of blows through and doesn't do anything, and it's no big deal. But it's sounding like it's going to be a Category 4 once it hits landfall, and it's going to slow down a little bit once it gets to us, but it's still going to be classified as a category hurricane. So bear with us while we're dealing with that. We really appreciate it. So Mike G says, confused about the wrist movement. Lag describes 3 movements. The move has 2 more. Could you simplify? All right. So I kind of went over this yesterday in the office. I was not sure if you were there or not, but I want to go over what exactly constitutes lag and where are the wrist movements involved in lag. So, and lag and the move actually are a part of the same thing. There's really one wrist movement that has to do with both lag and the move, and I'll go over that here in a second. So if you're thinking about lag, the first thing about lag is that you're trying to create an angle, a sharper angle between your arm and the shaft. If you're looking at my swing from face on, I'm coming down, I'm trying to create this sharp angle between my arm and the shaft in the beginning of the downswing. So you can only, if I have this club straight up and down, and I keep my wrist relatively flat here, and I bend this backwards as much as I can, I'm only going to be able to bend my wrist back roughly about 20 degrees. That's going to be with most people. If you have really flexible wrists, you might be able to do a little bit more. But I'm telling you, I'm saying straight up like this, that's the most I can do right there. Now, if I cup my wrist, you can see I've cupped my wrist. See that kind of angle I put in my wrist? I can do a little bit more. But if I keep my wrist flat, you can see that's about a 20 degree angle there. So obviously that's not the lag that I have in the golf swing. What gives a little bit of more of the appearance of lag is if I shallow the club out. So if I shallow the club out, you can see I've taken this club and I've shallowed it out. Now look, I have a much more sharper angle of lag. That's more like probably 50, 60 degrees of lag right there, as opposed to only a 70 degree angle or so right there. So I've sharpened that up quite a bit just by shallowing out the club. And that's one of the pieces of the move, right? The move is turning the doorknob to the right in the beginning of the downswing. That's shallowing out the club. So that's part of what gives you the appearance of lag and how lag and the move for hand in hand. But that's this position is also lag and it's also the move. So that's the second part of lag. The other part that gives a bigger appearance of lag is the momentum of the club head. So when you are swinging this club back, this club head has momentum moving in this direction. So when you switch directions, when your hands switch directions, that club has momentum, and that creates a sharper angle. So if you watch, if I just bring the club up like that, look at that sharp angle that I'm creating there. So that's the last piece of lag there that gives that appearance of that sharp angle. Now, the move is this kind of throttle kind of movement with the lead wrist, and also with the trail wrist. It's the trail wrist kind of bending back. So when we are coming down in the transition, we want to be turning this handle down to get it to square up earlier. So if I put this leading edge and line it up with the back of my lead wrist, watch, if I bow my wrist, if I'm just turning it on this axis here, which the shaft is on, then that is going to square up the face. It's actually closing the face, and that's going to allow me to square up the face at impact when I have forward shaft lean. So if I don't have forward shaft lean, I keep my wrist angles while I'm powering through it. I'll be able to square the face. But if I don't turn that handle down and I have forward shaft lean, what's going to happen is I'll leave that club face wide open. So that's why you have to turn this handle down as you're coming through impact to square up that face more easily there. So that's that move there. That's not a part of lag. This is really just a part of the move to get you to be squaring up the face. So that's in the tennis racket drill. We talk about shallowing out the club and squaring up the face by turning that handle, getting the strings of the racket to point more toward the camera there if you're looking from more of a down the line perspective. So hopefully that makes sense with all the wrist movements. But basically your wrist can only move in certain directions. So you have this thumb up, thumb down, this radial and ulnar deviation, and then you have rotation, pronation and supination. You have the rotation basically of the wrist, and then you have your flexion and extension, which is the wrist bending this way and this way. So in lag, it constitutes as the ulnar deviation, which is the thumb up kind of position, thumb up as much as you can, and then you have the turning of the doorknob to the right, which is for a right-handed golfer, it's going to be pronation for the right hand and supination for the left hand, which is inward movement. That's going to get you to where you're shallowing out the club. It's easier just to think both hands are turning the doorknob to the right. That's how we kind of describe it. If you're left-handed, it's going to be turning the doorknob to the left. So that's going to help you to shallow out the club very, very easily. And then as far as the moving is concerned, it's going to be extension of this trail hand, which is going to help you to get that club face squaring earlier. It's also going to help you to shallow out the club, but it's going to help you get that club face squaring earlier. And then it's flexion of this lead wrist, which is that bowing motion, which is squaring up that club face and also helping you to shallow out the club. So those are the movements. Hopefully that makes sense for you, but they all kind of, work together. And in fact, that shallowing of the club is directly related to both lag or both the move and lag. All right. So Jin G says, what's the best exercise practice technique for getting better at long putts over 40 feet? So what I'd recommend doing is going to your practice green and hopefully, you've got a pretty good facility there where you can practice hitting different lengths of putts. And what I would actually do is, with long putts, you're not trying to make it right necessarily. You're just trying to get it up there. So speed control is very, very important. That's really the most important thing with lag putting is getting that speed control right. So it's just a matter of going out and practicing it. What I'd recommend doing is, put a club like 2 feet behind the golf ball and play a game where you're putting from different parts of the green and you're trying to putt it, 40 plus feet, and you can't hit it past that club on the ground. You're really just trying to get that speed exactly right. Because if you get the speed pretty close and you're off by, if you get the speed exactly right, you get pin high with it because that's all you're trying to do with it. And your line is 2 feet off, you have a 2 foot tap in, right? Whereas if your line is 2 feet off and you blow it by the hole 4 feet, you might have, a 5-6 foot, little knee knocker, coming back. So the key is really just getting that speed right. And I'd be working through some of the drills that we have in the in the Top Speed Golf putting system to work on your lag. There's great lag putting videos in there as well. But yeah, that's what I'd recommend doing. Go out and practice it, different lengths, really focus on the speed. And really all you should care about is the speed. There's a drill in the Toss Speed Golf putting system, where I think it's where you're just putting, you're just trying to putt to the fringe and not go past the fringe, and you're trying to just play a points game. It's kind of like this. Whenever you're practicing and you're able to kind of put your pressure on yourself, and you have some sort of scoring system with how well you do when you're practicing, and you can kind of work on getting better and better and better with it and trying to beat your score. One, that makes practice more fun, and two, you can see if you're improving or not, because it's always it's easier and more fun to practice when you clearly see that you're improving or not. I think too many people just go out to the practice green, and I'm guilty of this as well, is just throw down a couple balls and just putt it to a hole, and then take them out, and then putt to another hole, then take them out, putt to another hole. There's really no structured practice there. So if you work on some drills like we talked about the Toss Speed Golf putting system, you can have a scoring system on what you're doing, and play against find a buddy and say, hey, you want to play a game, a quarter a hole or something like that, or a dime a hole, or you can just play for fun, bragging rights, whatever you want to do. Put a little bit of pressure on yourself, and because that's what's going on the golf course, right? Anybody can just go to the practice green and whack a putt up there and do really well. It's about what you do when you have to do it. Otherwise, there's going to be consequences. You might lose a quarter. You might lose some pride. Your buddy might brag about how he beat you in a putting contest or something like that. You don't want to have that. So, go out there, put some pressure on yourself, play some games doing it. It's more fun to practice, and it's also more effective as well. So Mark T says, any thoughts on practicing iron shots on mats versus grass? Yeah, there's nothing that's going to beat actual turf. If at all possible, I'd always try to practice on actual turf versus a mat. I know a lot of driving ranges and places like that these days are using mats. And the reason is that it's just more economical for them. They got to take care of the grass, and sometimes people tear it up, and people don't understand how to hit off a driving range. They don't do their divots properly, so they just end up with all these, a large area that has all these random divots on it instead of, just a small area that's completely, divoted out. If you watch a lot of players, ideally what you want to do, just to give you a little lesson on that, is position the ball right behind it on the grass, but right behind a divot. So that way, when you take a divot, it only takes a very small portion of the grass. You're already taking a divot out of where there was a divot before. So you're not tearing up as much turf. If you do that, it makes it, the driving ranges will, hopefully, keep more grass around. So, the thing about mat is it can kind of disguise a bad shot and make you think that you hit it well. You can hit 2 inches behind the golf ball and still feel like you hit the golf ball well. So it can kind of make things, not as good for you. So I would recommend practicing on grass, but obviously if you don't have the opportunity to, practicing on mats is definitely way better than not practicing at all. So I wouldn't use the mats as an excuse not to practice. If that's what you have to practice on, then that's what you have. But just keep in mind, it's always going to be better to do it on grass if at all possible. So John C., what role do your wrists play in the golf swing? John, in an effort to answer all of these, I have 4 questions left, and we're getting short on time here. That is a very, very loaded question, and I could probably go 20 or 30 minutes on that. Instead of me doing that, and I want to answer the rest of these questions, if you would, go to the vault section, and if you just click on the instruction tab, or hover your mouse over the instruction tab there, let the menu drop down, click on vault categories, and then you go, once you're in the vault categories, click on the crazy detail vault. You will see some videos in there where Clay talks about the role of the left wrist and the role of the right wrist in the golf swing, and he goes into crazy detail about all of those, and you're going to learn basically exactly what what I would say here. So go check out that video. Sorry, I'm not going to go through in immense detail. I just want to get everybody's questions here before I get off here. So John L says, welcome back, Hugh. I hope you had a great vacation. Yeah, I did have a great vacation. So it was nice to get away from a little bit and clear my mind. And it's always good to do that. So thanks, John, for the kind words there. So John W says, how do you determine how horizontal or vertical your backswing needs to be? That's a great question. So basically, there's not really a determination that everyone needs to be a certain height of their golf swing. There's really just pros and cons to having a more vertical or flatter backswing. So a more vertical backswing. So what I mean by vertical is, if you're not quite sure what I mean there, just imagine like a Bubba Watson. So Bubba Watson, he's getting his hands way up here. This is going to be more of a vertical swing. He's getting his hands really high up over his head. If you look at the lead arm is more in a vertical position as he's going up to the top. So that would be considered more of a vertical type swing. The advantage of that is that you can get more speed. You can usually get more speed from that position. And the reason is that if your hands are up here, then you're going to have more space and time to accelerate the club. And that's going to allow you to ultimately get more club head speed. So that obviously speed is great to have. We have a video in the 20-minute distance fix course where we're talking about getting the high hands, the skyscraper drill is what we're talking about there. So if you're struggling with distance, I highly recommend getting more of a vertical swing because it can help you get some distance. Now, a flatter swing would be think of a Matt Kuchar, for example. That would be someone who's kind of swinging more. Their lead arm is more across their chest as they're going up to the top, and they're more in this flat position. So the advantage to that is it's going to be a little bit easier to shallow out the club because it's basically already in a pretty shallow position right here. From here, there isn't much manipulation you have to do to get this club to come back down on plane and then come down into impact. So theoretically, you could be a little bit more consistent with a flatter swing. But the disadvantage of that is that you may not be able to create as much distance. So with that more vertical swing, that's kind of the disadvantage of the more vertical swing is you've got to bring this club down in the downswing to get it to come back down on plane. And you may not be as consistent when you do that. So it's all about finding the happy medium that works for you. So if you find that you're able to get ample distance from having a flatter swing and you're more consistent from there, then that's the swing that you should use. If you're able to get more distance from being more vertical and you're still able to get that club to come back down on plane, then that's the place for you. But anywhere in between is also good as well. That's going to be more that's where you're going to see most tour players is kind of in this in between area where it's not really vertical like a Bubba Watson and not really flat like a Matt Kuchar. So that's going to be where your Adam Scotts are, where your Jason Days, where your Ricky. Ricky's a little bit flatter, Ricky Fowler, and so is Rory is more vertical than Kuchar, but he's probably a little bit more toward the flat side as well. So it's all about finding the happy medium for you. But if you're looking for more distance, and that's really the most important thing for you, I would really focus on getting those hands up high, like we talked about in that skyscraper drill. All right. So Jim S says, Q, correct me if I'm wrong. If you do the quick start in the 20-minute distance fix, it adds up to 4 week, not 3. No, it's a 3-week program. So that would be basically, Jim's asking about the 20-minute distance fix and doing the quick start. So the quick start is the first drill that you do. It's 1.3, and it's kind of it kind of combines a lot of the things that you're going to be doing more focused work on as you move through it. So I believe it includes getting the hands higher. It includes getting a bigger shoulder turn. It includes swinging harder. It includes the step drill, and basically just kind of takes you through those very quickly. And that's what the first drill is. And then the second outdoor drill is going to be the sumo step drill, I believe. If I don't have it completely memorized, so forgive me if I'm wrong there. Or no, it's the catapult. That's it. So I believe it's the catapult is what you do there. So it's a 3-week program. If you just stick within, do each thing in the 3-week program, then do it as it's laid out. Then it's going to be 3 weeks. Now you can stretch it out into 4 weeks. You can stretch it out into 6 weeks. I know everybody's kind of busy, but we tried to make it so that it's a shorter amount of time so that excuse me, so that you're not out there, busting your hump for hours and hours and hours. We're trying to show that you can get some really good distance gain by basically spending 20, 30 minutes a couple days a week, a few days a week. And I think a lot of people are mostly capable of that. So yeah, it's a 3-week program, but you can go at it at your own pace. If you're only able to do one range session a week, which I completely understand. I'm a working guy myself. It's hard for me to get out to the driving range. Some weeks for sure. So, if you can only go one day a week, then that's completely fine as well. You'll just complete it in, 6 to 9 weeks or something like that instead of 3 weeks. So last question here. Eric D says, I really appreciate your teaching methods and explanations. The time is generous as well. Oh, great, Eric. So Eric didn't really have a question, more of a compliment. So glad you're enjoying everything, Eric. And I just wanted to reiterate here before I jump off of here. Thanks everybody for joining me. I'm not sure exactly when I'll be back. It's kind of up in the air. Right now, we are scheduled to be back Tuesday at 9 a.m. But depending on what happens with this hurricane, I don't know if we'll be going out. We'll be off Monday for the holiday, for the Labor Day holiday. That's already going to be off. But you're likely going to lose some power and internet and things like that. And I don't know what's going to be happening in the aftermath of this Hurricane Dorian. So we'll try to keep you up to date as much as we can. But if I'm not here on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, know that it's not because I forgot. It's because we may be dealing with some hurricane stuff here. So deal with us and wish us the best while we're going through that. Hopefully, everywhere else, you guys got some great weather to play some golf, and you're out there and playing well. So thanks everybody for joining me, and I'll sign off. And hopefully, I'll talk to you next week sometime. Thanks.